Hi, this is Uncle Matt's D&D Studio. I'm Matt Finch, and I'm here with Glynn Seal, who is one of the authors of the Midlands and the primary author of the Midlands. It's his campaign area. And we are going to be talking about that as well as some of the thinking that went in behind it. So, Glynn, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, let's start. I think I ought to preface this whole thing. I've been reading the Midlands, which Glynn was kind enough to send me a copy of. And I think that this, as a small area campaign supplement, is the best I've ever seen, displacing Dave Arneson's Blackmore First Fantasy campaign area, which up until now, and that's decades, has been my favorite one. And so we're gonna talk about it because I love it. And I guess the other thing to mention to people at the outset is that it is a bit European. It's set in England that's twisted a few notches on the dial toward the strange, more than a few notches toward the strange. This will fit. You can drop this into any European related type campaign, West European. I'm actually doing mine right at the moment in North Africa and sort of Moorish Spain. So for me, this wouldn't work. For some people, it wouldn't work. But if you've got, even if it's a swords and sorcery sort of campaign, I think you could drop this in pretty much without any problem. So, Glynn, talk a little bit about it generally.
Okay, well, basically the premise is that the Midlands is about the area in which I live in England. Although it's got these darker edges to it, and it's kind of grimy and yeah, sort of. There's a bit of humour in it as well. I think as a kid, I kind of grew up with Blackadder 2. And I don't know whether that's anything that that you guys have seen.
Oh well, it's definitely been here. I mean, I've seen it. I think a lot of people have seen Blackadder, so you get a very good.
Yeah, well, Blackadder 2 was the one set kind of medieval, sort of early Renaissance with Queen Elizabeth I, and I used to video it on VHS. You know, when it was out, and just rewatch it over and over again, and learn the script. And I think there's elements of that in there that I've kind of snuck in, not deliberately, just because that's kind of what was in my mind from being a kid, and also the fact that was about when I started playing as well.
Move your microphone slightly downward. There you go. Okay.
Yep. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not.
Yeah, you're good. You're good now.
Not a professional at these kinds of things. So yeah, and the setting kind of evolved. It wasn't what it wasn't a planned thing, really. It started off with me just drawing profiles of some of the monsters that are in the bestiary section, and there's a book called The Spiderwick Chronicles by Tony D. Talizzi, and I think it's made into a film as well. And it's basically small sort of fey creatures and bigger ones, boggarts and ogres, and they live in the real world. And as I was drawing them, I thought it'd be great to place them, you know, in a book. And yeah, that's kind of how the setting sort of started off, with me placing these creatures that were created.
Now, when you say boggarts and ogres, what's in here is much weirder than that. I think you picked a couple that are more traditional. You've got all kinds of things. I mean, first of all, this also is beautifully illustrated, but you know, you can see from this right here, which is a mauling. We're not talking about the Brothers Grimm recreated into here. It's much more Here's a what is it, a trunked saurian half ogre sort of thing with the snout. So this is very it is very, although it does have the feel of the sort of dark fairy tale. Most people, when they say that, they're drawing very heavily on the Brothers Grimm, and I do not think that you certainly it doesn't come out as feeling Brothers Grimm at all from the cold reader side.
Yeah, it's always really interesting to see how different people kind of interpret your kind of work. If I'm honest, when I sit down with a piece of paper and just start drawing a creature, I don't know where it's coming from. It just sort of appears on the page, and if it needs a horn, or it needs a third eye, or it needs a tentacle, then that's what it gets.
Are you the one that you're not the one that did the actual illustrations, though, as I recall?
Yeah, I've in terms of the artwork that's gone into the book, there were 3 people involved. There was myself, Jim Magnuson, who does quite a bit of OSR art. He did some of the illustrations in the bestiary section that are not the kind of side profiles and the silhouettes. Those are done by me, and those were created and then sent to Edwin Nagy.
Here are the some of the silhouettes.
Yeah, so Edwin, I would give Edwin a kind of a premise about what I wanted the creature to do and kind of how it would fit into the setting a little bit, and then he would sort of flesh out the details and add the stats in and do the technical work. So yeah, that worked out really well.
Also, those who want to see Edwin DMing, the Frog God Twitch channel has him running a campaign right now.
Yep. Yeah. And also there was a guy called Juan Ochoa, and he did, I think there's 2 illustrations in the book, the color green illustrations, the full pages, and I did a couple in there as well.
I'm sort of trying to figure out where the best place is to start with this, because I really like all of it. First off, okay, the map I think is probably the next thing to mention. So I'm going to hold up probably just a portion of the map because of the size of the screen. Yeah, there we go. So you can see on there that we have it's drawn first of all from the sort of Tolkien 3/4 perspective looking down, and it has the shields of the various dukes who are in the areas, and and this is a bigger map than this. It goes further out this direction, and it goes further out this direction as well. And I just noticed there's another side to this. Yeah, what is the difference between the I'm holding up this now. What is the difference between the 2 sides of the map?
There's no difference in terms of the detail. It's just some people might find the parchment version easier to read than the color, or it's preference. And it seemed a shame to go to the trouble of getting them printed when you've got white space on the reverse. It was a shame not to use it.
Okay, so the just looking through it, the various names of the places, I recognized a few of them as being real places slightly changed. Every single one of them slightly changed.
Yeah.
Which I liked that, especially because that actually gives sort of the feel of the whole thing, which is it's a bit realistic except slightly changed.
Yeah, it's like it but darker and a little bit weirder.
So let me talk for a moment about the idea of dropping this. I keep looking down at the book, and I probably should be looking at the screen. Let's talk a little bit about dropping it into someone's home campaign, because the size of the region is not large in terms of the way that a Greyhawk map or something like that, and it does not show any coastline either. At least not that I spotted at the edges of the map. So
no, that's right.
you have rivers running through it, But if you wanted to drop this down, there are no coastlines that are going to cause a problem for putting it in. You could put this into a landlocked part of your campaign, which I thought was convenient and a good thought on your part. Did you think that through in terms of that, or was that just an accident that the Midlands don't really have coastland?
Geographically, it's probably 2.5 hours from the closest piece of coastline. There's a second book coming out that will expand it further to the country and Scotland and Ireland, although they won't be called that. Yeah, well, in terms of writing the content for the book, I was trying to draw off my own knowledge of the locations, and what happens is the further that you spread from that, the less you know. And I wanted to keep little like Easter eggs, I guess, for people that knew or had been to some of the locations. Certainly the people in the UK will know a little bit more about some of the locations, and I'm sure some people have traveled from all over the world and been and maybe seen some of these locations. So yeah, I think it's probably about 30 miles. Sorry, I'm looking at a map on the wall over here. Yeah, something like about 30 miles or so.
So we're talking about one hex in the Greyhawk campaign. If you were to drop it into the Greyhawk campaign, and then depending on the scales of other campaigns, but this is very, very portable. It does have a bit of an English feel to it, but which was why I mentioned the having some sort of European link to it. But I think this would, for example, go into Greyhawk absolutely no problem at all.
Yeah, I think as well, like Warhammer First Edition kind of feel, although that's more sort of Bavarian and kind of Germanic. You can. I mean, you can use the setting for anything. The fact that the creatures are statted for S&W, obviously it's easy to convert for OSR, but the setting itself will fit pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I was reading the first part about the locations, I was still many pages into it before I even realized that it was for swords and wizardry, because the descriptions of the areas are essentially free of any statistics at all.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about that, let me hold up. This gives you an idea of the kind of thing that you're going to see in the setting area. You do have, little maps of, I think, every single hamlet and town in there. So,
yeah, I don't think every single one's in there. There's some have missed out just because, there were a lot of towns to draw, and that's a lot of little black dots, and my wrist.
It takes art. The actual process of art and cartography is far more boring than people might think when you are filling in lines.
Yes, I've learned to, if I've got a lot of black areas to fill, I just draw the outlines now, and when I scan it, I go into Photoshop and I just keep clicking and filling them all in, rather than getting the pen and doing it all manually. So yeah, trying to save a bit of time here and there.
How accurate are these pictures of the actual towns and hamlets? In terms of the real world?
Not well, some not at all, but there are some that have features that exist in the places. As an example, let's see if I can find a I mean, I'm probably closest to Warsaw. It's known in real life, but we call it Walsall. It's on page 38, and there's basically a church, and it's at the top of a hill, and there's a market beneath it, and that exists. That's been in Warsaw for forever. But yeah, Warsaw's much bigger than that's actually shown. So there's these little snippets that are, like I say, Easter eggs into what is actually there. On the right hand side of that Warsaw map, location number 3, which is the Arbour Park and Pond. There's actually a place called the Arboretum, which has got a huge sort of lake in it, and that's where that comes from. So they're bits of the real world leaking in to the fantasy.
And then just to finish running through the sorts of things that are in the book, it begins with the sort of the geography, and in that section there are all of the towns with those town maps breaking in during the various descriptions of the thing. And then there is the bestiary, which is quite large, lots and lots of pages of new monsters in here. They're statted for swords and wizardry, but they're going to be essentially portable into virtually any system.
Yeah.
Were you breaking in there with a?
No, I was just going to say that kind of after the locations, there's a few magical items, some new spells. It's not a particularly huge section. I call the section the oddities section because there's items, there's spells, there's it talks about the lampposts that are frequent, which are sort of lanterns filled with, they're like fireflies, but they're called gloom bugs, and they glow green, and that gives the setting its a bit more green to add to. I wanted an artistic hook for the whole project, which is this color green, and that is derived from the center of the planet, if you like, the Gloomium core. And Gloomium's this nebulous metal, kind of like iron, but a bit more weird, and it keeps leaching to the surface, and it's responsible for a lot of the weirdness.
And you don't actually have to put the Gloomium core in the middle of your planet, but basically what you see in the campaign area is the sort of greenish fog that there is in a lot of the areas running into it a lot. And also when Glynn is saying that the green is a theme, it is. In fact, you've got a large list of synonyms for green, so that the dungeon master doesn't have to keep saying green, green, green. There's all kinds of different.
Yeah. Yeah, as I was writing things, I kept coming up with the word green and thinking, I can't use it. I need to find something else because this piece of text just isn't working. So I thought, well, if it's useful for me to have the list, it's going to be useful for other people. So.
Now I'm going to get back to you mentioned the artistic effect of green, and I think that there is a great deal more that characterizes this area and makes it unique. But first, let me just finish talking through the sections of the book, because you do have there is a complete adventure in here, as well as the other resources that we talked about. There are various NPCs, and then you get into a section where many of the hexes on the map have an individual sort of, if you're hex crawling, you have a lot of the hexes in the map also have something characteristic that's described in the book.
Yeah.
Okay. So really, what you've got here. Although I would have liked to have seen a few more items, and again, I'm a big fan of Dave Arneson's Blackmoor campaign, where there were a lot of very characteristic items and spells in there, not all of which worked particularly well with the game, but all of which were neatly imagined. All right, so that is sort of an overview of the book. Now, and like I said, there are a lot of other things besides green that characterize it. And like I said, one of them was, I think the dark folkloric feel to it that you managed to do without pulling on the Brothers Grimm. This is all sort of new stuff, like the Brothers Grimm was, when you were a kid, and an ogre was something that you didn't instantly have a picture of a D&D ogre in your head. So let's maybe you could talk for a little bit about the. I lost my train of thought there, because I noticed that there are 2 bookmarks in the book instead of just one, which is a really nice. This is a very, very well constructed book as well. It's very heavy. The pages are nice. It is not black and white. There are many color pages. There are color tabs for people who want to refer to it. So, I should have mentioned that the physical quality of the book is also extremely high. And the thought that I had lost, now that I've given myself a chance to think about it by talking about something else, was the talk a little bit about how you worked with the various strangenesses that are in here.
In what way?
Well, you said
strangenesses.
There are lots of strangenesses in here. Very idiosyncratic things. I mean, your reference to Warhammer it was something that also sprang to mind. Although really, this is utterly unlike the Warhammer setting, but it is the same sort of feel that this is vaguely the real world, and then there is much more there that is very different from the stuff that's different in the real world. How did you come up with those sorts of things?
I think that's a good question. I think I'm probably a little bit bonkers, and that helps. I think obviously I've been playing, on and off since I was sort of 12, 13. I've played lots of different games, and influences from some of those early games, the D&Ds and the Warhammers and the Cthulhu's and all that sort of thing, have kind of got stuck in there, and they've rattled around with Blackadder 2 and things that are outside the window and have happened during my life, and I think that when I sit down to try and write a section or describe a town, I'm just thinking about things that that are real world, and then looking how I can just add whatever's rattling around in my brain to kind of weird it up a bit. And I don't really know where that comes from. It just comes from things that I've been subjected to in a nice way, during my gaming sort of career, if you like. So yeah, I don't really know where it comes from. It just comes out.
So now when you're taking a ramble through the parks and the wilderness and the fields near where you live, do you find yourself looking over your shoulder in case something was going to come out and get you?
Yeah, I think I mean, we talked about the Arboretum, which is a place near to where I live, and on the walk around that park there is a glacial boulder. And they moved it from another location in Walsall, and they planted it in the park with a little plaque that tells you all about it. So it's I can't remember now, 10,000 years old or something, and it came from Scotland, and the glaciers moved it to Walsall effectively. That appears in the book as blackened rock, and nobody really knows where it came from, but or how it got there, but it came from up north in Scotland. So yeah, what happens is I'll be walking around and I'll see something unusual, like this boulder, and think I need to somehow put this in the setting. It also doesn't have to have a reason to be there. It can just be a little something that gives a feed of a game hook, so that somebody can have another idea to spin off from that. And there's a lot of that in the book. I'll suggest some things, but not go into enough detail to kind of tell you what it is. That's up to you and what you want to put into it.
One of the illustrations in here very early on in the book set some of the tone for me when I looked at it, and that was, and let me see if I can find it. It's actually not as close to the beginning as I thought it was. Here we go. It's on page 23, at the beginning of the hamlet of Alderwich, and you have a picture down here of the town where you're seeing a tower and so forth, and it instantly reminded me of Russ Nicholson's illustrations in The Old White Dwarf.
Yeah, I
And
mean, White Dwarf and Imagine magazine, and Pellinor and all of that kind of thing are were an influence when I was 13, 14, 15, flicking through theme folios and all that kind of thing.
one of the best, actually, there were about four of them, issues of White Dwarf had a city in it, Irillion, I think it might have been. Do you remember those, or are those in your subconscious when?
Um, I, I don't remember that particular one, but the art style from I think the setting was called Pellinor, so maybe that was a map that was part of that. That art style is easy on my eye, and I like that the I like I like drawing architectural structures that are old. I have quite a lot of fun with those, and they take me back to that time
Are
when I
you
was
the one
flicking
that
through
drew?
those books. Yeah, I
Are
drew
you
that
the
one.
one that drew that picture? That's
Yeah,
gorgeous. I want to hire you to do some stuff
I think there's
on my.
another
As soon as
couple like that in the book. That,
there are, yeah, there
yeah.
are. But I mean, that one struck me just because it was the first one that I came across, and then it all of a sudden was part of the mental imagery, because really there is part of the thing. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Russ Nicholson's artwork unless you've looked through White Dwarf or Fiend Folio, or some of the one of the Choose Your Own Adventure books that was done by Ian Livingstone. Anyway, it was
Yeah.
published in Britain, and I don't know whether they got over here, but Russ is one of the very early artists and has a gorgeous style. And one of the things that he does is a bit like the way I've described the Midlands, is that it's normal almost. And I'm going to hold up a picture. I hold up a picture now of this illustration that we're talking about. And the thing that really makes it a Russ Nicholson sort of thing is this little hook up here on the house, because it makes everything, it's once again, it's just like what you would see, only just a bit abnormal. And so once again, now again, as one of the really old grognards, that probably had more of an impact on me than it would for somebody who was looking at it without all of the baggage from White Dwarf.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of some illustrations that and it's a case of the more time you spend doing the illustration and the more little details that you add after you've pretty much finished it, those are the things that make them stand out. Because people can draw buildings, but it's the little details that kind of add to that feel of what that illustration is. There's another one that I did some color work on, which you can see on the website. If you go to the Midlands page, and it's at the top and it's in color.
What is the Midlands page? Give the address of the page.
Okay, so that's www.monkeyblooddesign, all one word, .co.uk, and then from there, if there's a purchase stuff page. I'm not doing this deliberately to get people to go to purchase stuff page, but if you just hover over that,
I am.
Yeah,
That's
and then you'll see a Midlands. You'll see a Midlands link, and if you go to that, the color version of one of the illustrations is in there, which I think appears in the book. And this is what I'm saying about if the details that you add to the illustration help raise some questions about what's going on in the art. And I think the more times that you look at a piece of art and want to know more about what's going on in it, the more you're engaged with the piece of art, and the better that it is. So on that one, you've got some blood splats up the corner of the wall. You've got some green eyes in one of the windows upstairs, and it's kind of like, what's going on here? Some little gargoyles on the finials of the roof. So yeah, it's the art and the bits of detail that you add to that after are what really makes some pieces, and Russ Nicholson's brilliant at that. He did some work for Jeff Talanian's Astonishing Swordsman, Sorcerers of Hyperborea second edition as well. He's got some pieces in there.
Okay, so now you've run to the end of the discussion of illustration. I don't have anything more really to say about art and illustration, other than the big Russ Nicholson fanboy episode that you and I just went through. But definitely, if you have not seen any of Russ Nicholson's art, take a look at that. You put in Russ Nicholson, it's spelled with a CHOL, on the web, and you'll see some stuff that is really great, old line art and brushwork that is filled with flavor. There are probably several places to find it. So let's go back let's actually, we've talked tons and tons about the Midlands as a book because I liked it so much. Normally, when I'm doing these conversations, we don't stick really to topics very much at all. So so given that we've done the talking about the thing, now you talked about having played for forever. Talk about how you got into D&D Warhammer. Did you start with Warhammer? A lot of people in the UK started with Warhammer.
No, it was the classic red box, yeah, me and a friend, we'd kind of play in his front room, and probably played red box for probably until first edition came out, AD&D, and then progressed onto that, and pretty much played that exclusively for a couple of years. Ridiculous campaigns and ridiculous magic items, the kind that you can only come up with when you're and get away with when you're 14 and 15, plus 6 hellblades and all that, and it slays demons and demon lords. So from there, kind of migrated a little bit, I think, to Warhammer first edition, fantasy role playing, and also tabletop miniatures as well. I was big into Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, in the early days as well. Space Marines all the way. I've still got loads of Space Marines now, but what I've actually discovered is that I don't like confrontational gaming, yeah, my bunch of friends that are into that are they're much better than I am. So yeah, I find it a struggle. I'm definitely not. I'm not a strategist in tabletop miniatures wargaming. In fact, I'm useless.
Now, are you going to do a 5th edition version of Midlands? Because I see that you've got all the 5th edition books behind you.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a book collector. I don't actually get to play as often as I'd really like to, and I think I've got that many systems that I've had and I want to play but never get around to it. Like Numenera, The Strange, Tales from the Loop. I've got them all. I would say probably. I mean, I haven't even played 5th edition yet. We played 4th edition. We played 3. We played Pathfinder. We've played the kind of D20 systems, and D20 modern, D20 Call of Cthulhu as well. We played for a while. But yes,
I was not a big fan. I was not a big fan of the D20 Call of Cthulhu. What did you think of that?
My Chaosium Call of Cthulhu was played probably when I was 15, 16. I played quite a bit of it then, but I don't think that I probably understood the genre back then, the Lovecraft and or, a game that we played that was sort of similar was Dark Conspiracy, which was a GDW game, and we loved that. We played a lot of it. But yeah, I think we didn't play too much Call of Cthulhu D20, but yeah, I've got 6th edition, but again, I haven't played it.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the later versions of it. I think the version that I played was the last one that Sandy did, and so it's got still got all of the humor things in there, which, that was the one I played. That was awesome. I looked at the D21 and I didn't think it was as good. I just got there because you mentioned Call of Cthulhu, and so I mentioned D20 Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean the old school games as well. The clones, like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Astonishing Swordsman Sorcerers of Hyperborea 2nd edition, 1st edition. I've got Basic Fantasy, I've got Labyrinth Lord. I've got them all, but you can only play so many games, and when you're also trying to, because I'm pretty much doing Monkey Blood full time now, so I'm trying to kind of make a living. So I'm spending more time doing that than actually getting the dice out. Although we played the Midlands a few times when I've GM'd it. So, but yeah,
you definitely lose a lot of playing time when you start. Because one of the things I run into periodically is that all of a sudden, I'll be playing a game and I think, good God, this is just my work suddenly, and luckily it doesn't last. Luckily those phases don't last very long, but they do hit from time.
Yeah. I mean, I worked for a company in the security industry for nearly 30 years, and I just got too much, and the pace of things was just crazy. And I thought, what, I'm 45, and it's time to just sit back, relax, and find something that I really enjoy doing. And it was probably about 4 years ago that I started doing Monkey Blood design. And I think the first thing that that made me realise that I might be able to kind of do this as more than a hobby was I was making map symbols, and I posted them online, and I was approached by Pro Fantasy Software to create some symbols for them, and I thought, maybe I can make this work, and yeah, I kind of haven't really looked back then. It's paying the bills, and yeah, hopefully it'll continue to grow.
And I think come out with more stuff like this, and I think it will grow a lot. This is because I'll quit fanboying about it. But
no, it's really nice of you to say. I'm really
well, it's very. I really am. I'm one of the people who is at least very strongly influenced that the stuff that I played in middle school when I was 12, I love that stuff, and I know that part of it is because I was playing it when I was 12 and had the and it was new and all of that. So it's fairly rare that a new product that is directly comparable to the old ones is actually able to knock something out of the box. And so this one, Midlands, I really like this, and I'm gonna go deeper into that. Although it's a bit of a shame that I'm doing a campaign it won't fit into right now, so unless they walk through a transporter or something like that. There's just a wrong part of it.
Yeah, every door's a new world.
My players don't walk through doors that look like they might be transporters.
Yeah. Don't make it look like a transporter.
One of the players in my online game has been gaming with me since we were 10. We've known each other since we were 5, and so he's very, very alive to the sorts of tricks that I pull on things like that. So,
yeah.
he'll probably be able to keep that group out of the Midlands.
Excellent.
All right, let's begin drawing to a close. What kind of things would you like to talk about that we haven't talked about? I've done a lot more talking than normal here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Midlands itself, I've got all sorts of ideas and things in the pipeline. So when I'm not working on commission related things, that's what I'm doing. I'm writing and I'm illustrating and doing things for my own projects. So the second book for the Midlands is probably about 2 weeks from a Kickstarter, maybe.
Oh wow! So this is right there.
Yeah, I've the second. Well, this is my ultimate plan. So yeah, maybe don't listen to this just in case it doesn't happen. But I'm kind of hoping that the Midlands will turn into 3 Kickstarter campaigns. So the first one we've already done, and it's produced this book. It also produced, I don't know whether you've seen the leather cover versions that we did for the Kickstarter, which a guy called Randy Shazinski of Abbott's Hollow Studios created for me, and they're basically slip cases, so the book slips inside them. So that was the first Kickstarter. Then, so the second one, it's called the Midlands Expanded, and it basically goes out and encompasses some detail about Havenland, which is England, and the locations that are kind of within, going up to Scotland, Ireland, across the seas to where Scandinavia is, kind of thing, and that's called the Serpent Lands. And you can see a bit of France. In fact, I've got a map. I might be able to screen share it if I'm clever. Let me just see.
Yeah, screen share should work since we're in Google Hangouts.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Go down to the mouse down.
I've got it. I've got it.
Okay.
Did that work?
There we go.
Okay, so
you have to talk. You have to keep talking, or else it'll switch back over to me.
Okay, understood. Okay, so this is Havenland. You've got Scotland, which is my sort of version of Scotland. Hadrian's Wall, which is called Hard Adrian's Wall. And as you scroll down, you've got Wales, and it's pretty much geographically the same. There's a few differences, and France in the lower right. And I was having a discussion recently with Gavin Norman of Necrotic Gnome Publications, who does the Wormskin magazines, and we've strategically placed his dolmen wood just in the confines of Ireland, or Emerald as it's now known. It's a one-way thing. I've just dropped it in my setting just in case anybody's using dolmen wood and likes it. Again, that's a very English folklore type setting. It's really good. You guys should check that out. Yeah, so this is going to be expanded a little bit more. The Midlands itself is kind of this area: Staffordshire, Tilfordshire, Western Midlands, and Burnton up there in the top right. So that's giving it a bit more room to play with. And then let's see if I can be clever again. There we go. So that's kind of what I'm planning for the Kickstarter, which is a folding A5 GM screen, which is the same size as the A5 book. So when it's folded up, it'll fit in the same space as the book.
So it's not going to be. What that means is it's not going to be as tall as the sort of American AD&D
no,
Dungeon Master.
it's just 6 inches high, so that when you're at the table, you don't have this dividing wall, but you've still got quick, easy reference to the tables themselves.
And I do like those lower DM screens. I remember when Jim Raggi was talking about how you can use CD folders to create a fairly low DM screen. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, and so the map of Havenland on the reverse will have an 8-panel sort of mood art, which it's there really for while you're gaming, you can stick it on the wall, and the images help kind of set the scene for the DM. It's a player aid more than anything. And also I'm toying with this die drop card, which will basically have the OGL information on the back for the GM screen. So that's just something that you can spice up a bit of random results by dropping dice on this card, and in certain places. So I've got a bit more thinking to do on that, but that's currently the plan for the second one. And then the third one, I'll just switch back to me. How do I do that? There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, so the third one, I'm not quite sure what that will be, but it will probably be with a slipcase, so that you can actually fit all of this stuff in one Midlands theme slipcase. So yeah, and then I've got another project called Trollfang, Hades Rising. It's kind of just all these ideas falling out, and I just don't have the time to sort of develop them all. Yeah, I'm a restless creative spirit.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I go through the phases like that. And all right, so that's so there will be a Kickstarter. So probably by the time people watch this, it will be imminent or finished, depending on when it is that that you look at it. So, but what we'll do is, if you would just, in case I don't spot the Kickstarter, I'm sure I will, but in case I don't, message me, and then I will add the link to the Kickstarter into the description of this video. I'll just go back and edit the description of the video. And with that, I am sure that I will ask you to come back on again once your Kickstarter goes live, and we will talk more about it then.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
All right, great.
Yeah,
so
thanks,
everybody.
Thanks so much for having me on and listening to me waffle. I really appreciate it. And I'm really glad you like it.
I thought it was wonderful. Okay, so let me say to everyone, no matter what kind of D&D it is that you play, imagine the hell out of it.